I moved to Wayland, and oh my gosh, there is a lot to talk about. So here's the plan for the video. I'm gonna start by talking about my window manager and the programs that I've moved to. I'm gonna talk about my status bar, which is actually the reason why I moved to Wayland in the first place. I wanted to code something very specific that I was struggling to do on X11, so I decided why not just upend everything and move to Wayland instead. I'm gonna talk about the positives, the things that I like about Wayland, and I'm gonna end the video by talking about the compatibility issues that I've encountered. Now, I'm using DWL, which is a compositor based on WL roots. The reason why I'm using it is because it is, to my knowledge at least, the smallest available tiling window manager for Wayland. That was actually one of my goals with moving over to Wayland. I wanted to not only limit the number of pieces of software that I have installed, but also work on that software myself. And in order for me to, get into the software and understand what's going on enough to work on it, having it be a more minimal piece of software is kind of a requirement because I don't really know what I'm doing yet. So yeah, I like opening up software and trying to mess around with it, change features, that sort of thing. Anyways, with DWL, that is made super easy since you literally just patch in other people's pieces of code for the features that you'd like. I do actually intend to try to write a couple patches for DWL. I haven't started on that yet, but that is something that I'm going to try to learn how to properly do. Anyways, I've patched in the ability to rotate clients, which just allows you to rotate your clients in the stack. For me, that's pretty essential for workflow. I added in vanity gaps, which is the gaps around the corners of the screen and in between the windows. Not only is that for separating, visual focus between those windows, but also I like seeing my wallpaper in the background. I added in client opacity focus, and that actually allows me to see which window I'm currently focused on, just without the need for window borders or anything like that, just based on the opacity of that window. And I also added the ability for custom floating windows so that I can have my little pull-up menus like for my wallpaper and that sort of thing. I just want to, set my wallpaper like that. Pretty simple to do. That is actually just in your configuration if you add in that patch. It's literally under your rules here, and you can just set up like what you want that window to be defined as in terms of the position and the size. So DWL is just, you have patches, you have a repository of patches, very similar to DWM. I will upload my build if you really want to use it, but I would recommend if you haven't messed around with patching a piece of software, it's worth trying to do it. It's a good way to learn how that software works because you're going to start learning like where is what in this code. Now, back on X11, I relied pretty heavily on dmenu, not just as an application launcher, but more importantly as a program that could generate a custom menu for me based on a list of options that I could feed to it, and then once I select an option, have it execute a command or do a task or something like that. That was an essential part of my workflow. Now, this could translate directly over to Wayland with a program called wmenu, which is almost exactly the same as dmenu. It's basically just going to be a direct replacement for it. But I have a vested interest in making my own life hard. So instead of using wmenu, I want to try doing this in pure shell because I believe it is possible. Now, the reason that I believe it is possible is because of a program called FFF. FFF is a file browser written in pure shell. I've been using it for quite a while. It really works quite well and it does exactly what I need it to as a file browser. So I have tried to adapt FFF here as a very, very crude approximation of the application launcher functionality of dmenu. I can search a string, I can navigate through the various options that pop up, and I can launch whichever one of those options that I want to launch. Now, this is imperfect, there's a lot of things wrong with it right now, and I'm not sure I'll ever be able to get that fuzzy search capability that dmenu has, but I think it is going to be possible for me to generate my custom menus off of a program like this. So I'm going to try to work on this, and I will make a video with progress updates at some point. The terminal emulator that I'm using is called Foot, I believe is how it is meant to be pronounced, because the original name for it was Foo Term, and then that got shortened down just to Foot as such. I think that's a pretty cool name for it, to be honest. It has a number of features, and actually several beyond what I was working with in my ST build back on X11. One of the bigger ones being Sixel image support, which now I don't have to do any sort of workarounds to get images working in my terminal. To be fair, I did quite enjoy having to do those workarounds and having to set those up back on ST, but it's cool that it's just there by default. There's a number of other features too that I have yet to look into and play around around with, but it has all of the core features that I had patched into my ST build just already here. So that was one of the main things that I was looking for, while also looking for a terminal that is still quite minimal and quite lightweight and fast overall, which I can definitely say this is. My experience using this has really been perfect so far. Zero complaints, configuration is great. I would highly recommend it. It's time for the most important part of the video, and as you can probably tell, I am so excited about this. So, my status bar. What is my status bar? Well, it is originally based off of a bar called SumBar. SumBar is a DWM-like bar for DWL, as it says on the page, and it is essentially just exactly what you would get out of DWM's bar, but rewritten as a separate bar for DWL. Now, this bar was the reason that I moved to Wayland, because the issue that I kept running into on DWM was that because I wanted to add album art into my bar and have it render just directly as I switched tracks immediately, you know, whenever I switch a track, I want it to update that art there. I'm just switching tracks with keybind, so like just to demonstrate that I have it working. So that was something I was trying to do in DWM back on X11, and I kept running into issues with it. I eventually got it to a semi-working state, but because of the fact that DWM handles all of that rendering logic internally, and it also doesn't use any like graphics library like Cairo or anything that I was at least a little bit familiar with, I was really struggling with that. I ended up with a number of bugs in it and it kept crashing. So I was like, alright, let me just try doing this on SumBar on Wayland, because I've had Wayland on my laptop for quite a while now, and I had read through SumBar's code. I thought it would be a lot easier to do just directly in SumBar instead of trying to do it like back on DWM itself in X11. And lo and behold, it was. So adding the image in is actually really easy. It's literally just painting the image, because Cairo is already in this program. Cairo is a graphics library just to like do 2D graphics, and Cairo is already there. So I can literally just load up the image and render it. The other piece of functionality that I added into SumBar that I really wanted was live updating with wallpaper colors. So I use PyWall 16 to generate colors out of a wallpaper, and I can just live update everything. It is instant. It is perfect. Like literally, this is perfect. I think this is just as good as it gets. I'm so happy with this. So adding PyWall colors was also really simple. All I had to do was have SumBar read from the wall colors file and have a little reload command that it can listen for, and then when that command is sent to it, it will just reload the bar. It will just redraw and re-render the bar. It was literally like this simple. Like this is all that is needed for those reload lines, and then the other thing is just reading that wall file. Now, as you can see by my multitude of comments, I have a lot more to work on with this program before it's ready to like make a video about it or upload it anywhere. I think I've changed enough to not have this be a patch. I think I'm just gonna make my own fork of this program when I upload it, because I've removed some of the essential features that were in SumBar originally, like having the tags there and the layout icon and the title, mainly because I don't need any of that. I have really developed muscle memory at this point for what applications I have open on which tags. I also don't need to see the title of the application. I know which application is open. So for me, those were just unnecessary features in the rendering that I could completely get rid of. But in terms of the stuff I've added, there's definitely bugs that I need to troubleshoot, even though the core functionality is there and working. I've also completely eliminated the need for a blocks helper program. Back on X11, I was using DWM blocks, and I could have switched to using some blocks here, which would hook into SumBar, but I actually don't need to do that because I added that little reload functionality for the PyWall colors. Instead, I can just have my scripts call that reload as needed. So for example, every time I switch a track here, I can just have it reload the bar. I just have in my little script that's fetching the metadata, I just have it after it fetches the metadata say, hey bar, you need to reload. It just sends it the command and it reloads. And you might be wondering, how do I avoid also reloading the scripts, like for example my weather here, that I don't want this to reload every time I switch a track? Well, I just save that weather information to a cached file, and I only update that weather information like on a set timer with a cron job. I update it like, I don't know, 5 times a day or something like that. So that just gets saved to a cached file every time it updates, and then I just cat out the files together into the bar. I literally just concatenate the files with cat, and then that puts everything that I need in the bar while only updating the things when I need to update them. And I still have bar click functionality. The only thing that I'm technically missing is clickable functionality for each individual block, as it were, as you would have with like DWM blocks or some blocks box, but I'm honestly not missing that too much because I still have the core click functionality. Like I can, left click, middle click, right click, and I can have something bound to each of those, and that's good enough for me. Another feature that I added that I completely forgot to mention, I can do notifications directly in the bar. I have a little script called notif. I can do notif s, and then I can put like my notification text goes here, and maybe I want that to stay in the bar for like, I don't know, 5 seconds. There we go. There is my desktop notification. And sure, that doesn't have the capabilities of a real notification daemon. Like, obviously, I'm not going to have a icon next to it or something like that, or any of the more advanced features, but that actually replaces that core notification functionality of having a little message pop up on the desktop that I can call with like a script or something like that. So I can actually completely get rid of a notification daemon. I don't need it anymore. Oh, and by the way, almost all of my scripts translated perfectly. For example, my screenshot script, I am just using the program Grim to screenshot with, and Slurp for selection. And these program names, man, these are crazy names, but yeah, those are the real names for those tools. I am thinking about how I want to actually update my scripts where I have them posted because, I kind of don't want to remove all of the X11 functionality, but I also don't want to add in a check if somebody is using X11 or Wayland, because honestly, if I were using a script, I kind of wouldn't want that check there. I would just remove it. Like if I downloaded a script and it wasn't for the environment that I was using it on, I would just completely remove that check, for my own personal use, right? So I'm not sure how I actually want to update these scripts because I want to keep them like minimal and not have all sorts of checks for like, are you using this or are you using this, right? I'm thinking about how I want to do it, but I will probably make a future video on that. Okay, let's talk positives, things that I like, as well as issues and compatibility stuff that I had to troubleshoot. So first of all, the positives. Wayland is so much faster than X11. Now, obviously this might not be due to Wayland itself. This might be due to swapping out, for example, DWM for DWL. This might be due to swapping out another program. This could be due to any number of things, but I will say, overall, everything is like noticeably far faster, and I guess I didn't realize what I was missing out on. I should have tried it again sooner. I did actually try it quite a while ago and ran into so many compatibility issues that I was like, nope, I'm going back to X11. Anyways, let's actually talk about those compatibility issues. So something you might have noticed is that this entire video, I have had programs open that are keeping the screen constantly moving. That is not for some stupid thing like keeping you engaged on the video. That is because how screen recording works on Wayland. If I don't do that, the video ends up where you have one frame. It stays at that one frame until the screen is updated. So essentially, I have to keep the screen constantly updating, or I end up with video files that I guess technically I could use if I chopped them up, but it's unusable. Something else that I had to troubleshoot is Wine. I have yet to find a fix for that. I use Wine to run Photoshop. As I've mentioned before, I do occasionally use Photoshop anytime GIMP or Krita don't cut it. That does occasionally happen, and Photoshop is an essential program for me when I do need to use it. So Wine was unable to run Photoshop. On X11 it worked just fine. I had zero issues with it on X11, but on Wayland here, yeah, it just crashes when I run it, and I have done all of the various troubleshooting steps that I could find. So I'm gonna have to continue troubleshooting that. Hopefully I can fix that up. Now, I ran into a couple other compatibility issues off the bat, but just with some quick searches, I was able to fix all of them. So overall, not too bad. So if you're wondering whether you should migrate to Wayland, well, I think it's worth a try. You might run into something that is unsolvable and you have to go back to X11 for now, but I think a lot of progress has been made in the past couple years in terms of compatibility, and really there's a lot of good programs available for Wayland. So I'm gonna make a bunch of videos on those programs in the near future. I'm also going to make videos on the programs that I am attempting to rewrite or attempting to do my own thing for. That will be very interesting to see how much of just the core desktop stuff I can replace with like shell scripts or similar. I'm genuinely just doing that because I find it really fun to do. There's not, a real point to doing it at this point. Like, it's not as if I'm getting any sort of like true performance benefit from like minimizing something down into a shell script, but I genuinely want to see what's possible. Like, how minimal can I get the functionality? I don't know, I find it fun. Anyways, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Peace!